Hello, welcome to Chat with Dr. Kat. I'm Dr. Kat. It's wonderful to see you today. Today we're going to be talking about our hair health, and how important it is not only for our appearance, but for our mental health. A lot of times it's linked, greatly linked actually, how we present ourselves, what our hair looks like. Hair loss is such a big deal for women and for men, but there's just this attachment to who we are as our identity when it comes to our hair. And when we find it falling out or not understanding proper health care when it comes to our hair, it puts us in a quandary. It puts us in a place of sadness. It puts us in a place of lack of confidence. So today I brought you a healthcare hair expert who's going to be specifically talking about hair loss, hair health care, as well as scalp care. So important. So everybody just kind of sit back. I really recommend just sitting back and listening. And if you have to go back to replay, please do so. Take your notes then, but really sit back and listen. So today we have Diana Robinson, an expert, and we're going to be talking about our hair and our healthcare when it comes to that. So let's just kind of get right to it. And I know one of the biggest things is that there is natural shedding that goes on with our hair. So what is the difference between shedding and hair loss, and how can you tell the difference?
Okay, hello, Kat. Yes, I am a hairstylist. I have been in the business for 25 plus years. I've now started a consultation hair loss company as well. And yes, the difference and the importance of, hair shedding, the differences, we all shed hair. It's a matter of the hair growth cycle. It starts out with the anagen cycle, and that can be from 2 to 7 years. So we are growing, we have our hair, then we go into the catagen cycle. And the catagen cycle is where the follicle starts to shrink. And then eventually, scientifically, we're here in the telogen cycle. And what that does is it stays in place, it's just sitting in the scalp. So then we get into the shedding phase, which is the exogen phase. And that's where the hair is actually falling out. And why is that happening? It's a natural process that we all have, but sometimes we get into that transition phase, the catagen phase, and that's when it's falling out too soon. Why is it falling out too soon? Is it stress? Is it hormones? Is it nutrition deficiencies? There's just so many factors that can lead into hair loss. And, as I, stand behind the chair doing my client's hair for years, I was becoming this medical enthusiast as far as why are so many people losing their hair? Why is it happening when they go into menopause? Why is this happening when they're stressed out? Why is their hair going gray? All of these things from the stresses. There's also our endocrine system. I mean, environmentally, we are just being hit from all sides when it comes to all of the endocrine disruptions as far as the candles, the air purification, what water filters are we using? What shower filters are we using? Because remember, our skin is our biggest organ of our body, and we absorb all of those pollutants, whether it's environmental, whether it's the water, the receipts now that we're touching the receipts, all of these things. And then that's not even counting what we put into our body. So, and then we get into our nutrients, what are our levels? As far as our vitamins, our vitamin D, our zinc, our vitamin 12, iodine, how much protein, ferritin, which is iron, serum iron, all of those levels, are they optimal? Because what, is suggested by a lot of these lab readings is just kind of what is common for the public at large. But that's not what's common for everybody. And sometimes you can be losing hair because of you're not at an optimal level of your vitamin nutrition, or I should say your vitamin serum levels.
But let me, when you mentioned a couple of things that I want to kind of tap into a little bit more. It's interesting that you talk about those receipts. I've been talking about those stinking receipts for years because women, especially, and men, they'll put their receipts in their pocket, and every time they go for their wallet, they're touching the receipt, then they're touching their face. Women, they're digging through their purse, they're touching those receipts, and the receipts have such a chemical on them, and it absorbs through the skin. And so there's a lot of things that people aren't really thinking about. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's overall health, but people don't think about that when it comes to their hair. I think they do think a lot about stress and maybe cortisol. So what about stress and cortisol? Because everybody has that, and it's like the big thing on TikTok. What are your cortisol levels? And do you wake up? Should you not have your cup of coffee in the morning? So talk about that.
So cortisol is important. It's what does wake us up. So we do need cortisol. The problem is when we have cortisol too late. And so when we have too much cortisol too late, our body is tired, but our mind is still going. So we can't sleep correctly, meaning we're not falling asleep at the right time. What does our bedtime hygiene look like? Are we kind of turning down the lights, which lowers cortisol? Are we just calming down, not on our screens? Are we not having those big discussions at night? Are we doing all of the things for our cortisol to stay level? Now, when cortisol does get too high, that's where the problems come in. It can affect hair growth. And hair loss and hair growth, to me, they're kind of interchangeable, because hair growth, hair health, the hygiene of the scalp, all of those things are kind of in this, all spokes of a wheel, if you will. And our center, issue is this hair. And, how is it being affected by all of these different spokes of the wheel? So cortisol, it's really hard to also test. And cortisol is a hormone. So just like estrogen, just like testosterone, just like progesterone, androgens, all of those hormones, those all need to be tested correctly. And what happens is we go to get our labs done. And again, we're being told what the, society, a normal level is. But again, that's not an optimal level. And the problem is when we test these hormones right at that point of your lab that day, that's the only reading you have is that time of the day. But our hormones fluctuate all day long.
Right.
So it's actually not a true reading. Is your cortisol fine? It might be at the point of the test, but there's another test, and it's specifically, I guess a functional doctor would be more of a doctor who does this test, and it's called a Dutch test. And so it's a dried urine test. It's a 24-hour test that can measure all of those hormones throughout the 24 hours. So it captures your hormone metabolism patterns. And it tells you truthfully, and your cortisol, is it at the right level? And that's why for me, it makes more sense to invest in a test like that. And again, if you're going to go to your normal primary physician, they probably aren't going to know what the heck you're talking about. I asked my doctor about it, and he's lovely, he's wonderful, but he had no idea what I was talking about. And so I then, went to a functional person, because, this can be ordered, but you do need somebody to read it, meaning a functional doctor. Now, can you plug it into Claude? Can you plug it into AI, into one of those? Possibly, but, still, oftentimes I think it's best, somebody who's familiar with this type of test. And that is, I think, hands down to test all of those hormones makes the most sense.
It is interesting. On several different episodes, we've talked about the medical field and how wonderful they are. But when women do get to a certain age, I think they're still trying to put women in the same category as, say, a 25-year-old woman reading these tests. And I know I had an issue. I've always had an issue with my thyroid. And I remember I went in and I got this test done. And I normally go through this other doctor, but my primary, I went through, she wanted to read my results, and she's like, "Oh yeah, it's fine." And I said, is it? Yeah. Because if you put it with the standards of a woman my age, as opposed to a woman who's 25, It's a
Or
vast,
a small man. You're not a small
right,
man.
or a small man. And,
That's how we're tested
exactly. And
and
I said,
compared.
right, to look at the difference. So I sent her a bunch of research. She was wonderful. She came back and she says, wow, I stand corrected. And I said, and this is why I will stay with you for now. Because,
Yeah.
but you're wanting, to have that. So this is also what I'm hearing, that if you're not getting the results that you want, you may have to step away and go to another doctor to kind of help you through that process. And I'm glad you mentioned that test, because
Right.
I think it's important to know what test.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing.
Well,
Go ahead. Tell me.
I was going to say another thing on cortisol. Everybody is so big about biotin
Hmm.
and taking extra biotin. Well, the problem is with biotin is it can also skew your cortisol levels and give you a false reading, either low or high. It also can skew your TSH levels, which is thyroid, your tropins, your sex hormones. Biotins can completely skew your lab results. Excuse me. So that's another thing to take into consideration when it comes to cortisol.
That's really important to say, because I think also in the world of TikTok, women, we are inundated, and men as well, with we should be taking this, we should be adding this to,
Mm-hmm.
add your collagen, add your, this to this, take this pill to,
Oh,
change
yes.
this and change that. And, all the different forms of products to put on your face. And,
Right.
I've mentioned this in another episode about this one app that I tend to really like. I call it the Yucca app. My husband
Oh, yeah.
calls it Yucca,
Uh-huh.
and I always joke about it, because I always say,
Yucca's right.
yeah, I know, but
Kidding.
I have my girls that they've downloaded it, and I'm like, we got to see what's Yucca and what's not.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
and they plug it in, because sometimes they're inundated with, this is the product, to
Yes.
use. You go see that product and it's a 5 on a scale of 100. You don't want to
Hmm.
put that on your
Yes.
skin. And then you find out later it's a domino effect that can affect hair and everything else. So let me ask you this before we deep
Well, so
dive.
just to add on to that,
Yeah.
too, Kat.
Mm-hmm.
People ask me all the time. I have my one-on-ones with my clients that I do via Zoom or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And the first thing they ask me is, what can I take? Just like you said, what can I take? Just tell me the serum, tell me the vitamins, tell me what to use. And it is such a loaded question,
Mm-hmm.
because what are you deficient in?
Mm-hmm.
I always, and listen, I'm no doctor, but I always say to them, if you bring me your labs, I will tell you
Mm-hmm.
what you're deficient in.
Mm-hmm.
Because why are you taking vitamin D? Why are you taking zinc if you don't have to? I mean, I got my vitamin D up to 80, believe it or not, which is unheard of, but I worked hard at it. Vitamin D is usually one of the usual precursors. If your vitamin D is low, if your zinc is low, if your ferritin is low, if your what else is there? Vitamin C. If those things are low, I know you're going to have issues with losing hair. So I say to people constantly, I don't know. There isn't just one pill. There isn't one supplement. There isn't even one topical. There isn't one thing that I can say, this is what you need to use, because everybody's different, So, and as far as apps too, I don't know if you know about another app. It's called the EWG, and it's the Environmental Working Group.
Oh.
And that is a nonprofit,
Mm-hmm.
and it evaluates consumer products for all the potential health risks. So they are the ones that do the dirty dozen. So they go from agricultural, where they're looking at which of the vegetables, produce, fruits have been the most sprayed for the
Mm-hmm.
season. Okay. They look at all the ingredients in cosmetics. They have a tier system, and it's EWG approved, or there's level 1, 2, and 3. I don't go past level 3, because there's some things that,
Yeah.
that can be disruptive to very sensitive people. And then there's some things that aren't. But when it comes to the pesticides on the foods and that kind of thing, I just look to see what are the least amount of sprayed right now. And there's some things that you should buy organic, and there's some things that you don't. But that goes
Absolutely.
into the nutrients and everything that we're ingesting and being exposed to. But what I also like about this app is it also tells you about your household and your environmental toxins and what you should be using in your kitchen. Because that's when I talk to a client, I talk to them about everything: air purification, water purification, what they're using in their kitchen and their laundry detergent, what they're using on their hair. I mean, everything. So that's a really good app as well as your Yuka Yucca.
Yeah, very yucca yucca. I love that. No, you mentioned laundry detergent. That's been a big thing in my household for a little bit of time now because I've had to
Mhm,
find products that still smell good because,
mhm.
my kids are like, I want it to smell good. And,
Yeah.
even my husband will say, oh, God, this one, I don't like it. And my
Can
first
I give
res-
you a
I
secret?
was like, "Do you want cancer? do,
Yeah,
do
yeah.
you do you want that, or do you want this?" I mean, lo and behold, I've been able to do it. And I found my top five, and I've been able to
Uh-huh.
use it. But yes, tell us your secret.
I have a no fragrance, and no fragrance is big, but there
Hmm.
are a lot of them that put natural fragrances in, so it's okay. But let's just say it is a plain Jane. I just add essential oils. I do orange blossom.
Right.
I just add a whole bunch of that, and it works, and it doesn't affect the cleanliness of the clothes. But I do that in our hand soap. I do that
Yes.
in our everything. So yeah, that's a little secret that I
Yeah.
will add in.
No, that's a great one. I found a product that uses essential oils
Yeah.
for fragrance, and
Hmm.
it just makes a difference. And now there's no complaints, there's no problems, but you're not putting that, and people don't necessarily
Right.
think a lot about the plates that they're eating off of, and you're using these harsh
Hmm.
products, and it has a residue, and every time you wash your hands at your sink in the bathroom, and all of that. And so there's a lot of different things out there that we have to be careful about that we don't really think
Yeah.
affects our body. So tell me, let's go back into some of the root causes of hair loss. So what are some of the root causes that you see, maybe that you know of, but the majority of the clients that you see, what are you seeing are root causes?
Well, like we said, nutrient deficiencies, that's a big one. Hormonal is huge, which is why I had researched so much about the Dutch test and that kind of thing. I did a deep dive into that. And then there's methylation. Methylation issues, there oftentimes, so about 44% of society has a methylation gene that it doesn't process the nutrients correctly. So it can be it's MTHFR, MTR, and COMT. So those can affect liver detox, homocysteine control, and homocysteine control, that is derived or it can be, I guess, higher for people who have ADD, OCD, even autism, those kind of things. But we're working with the neurotransmitter production. It works with estrogen processing. I mean, all of these things. But it also deals with the methylation cycle function. It's like it's all in my head, and I'm trying to get it all
No,
out.
yes, this is
But
great.
DNA repair and cell turnover. So when you're not methylating correctly, your stress response, your parasympathetic versus your sympathetic doesn't turn off. So you're in constant fight or flight.
Hmm.
And so you're not methylating correctly. And so, anyways, if you're taking these vitamins or these nutrients in every day, but they have nowhere to go, they're not methylating correctly, it can show, like I said, in mood disorders or the feeling of mood disorders, the ADDs, the OCDs, even some of the autism issues is you're just not methylating your vitamins correctly. And even with postpartum, I mean, a lot of women that have postpartum, I mean, think about it. What do they give you in postpartum? It's folic acid or folate.
Hmm.
And that is the main thing that the body can't process, which is what takes you into these conditions. I don't know if I was clear on that in the beginning. And so many of our foods are fortified with folic acid and folate. Well, 44% of the world cannot methylate these. They can't process them. So you get a buildup of these, I guess, these nutrients, and it shows itself in ADD, OCD, and not saying that that's what it all is caused from, but there's so many women that are taking these prescribed folic acid, men and women, and they're exhibiting some, pretty serious issues, especially postpartum. I mean, the one thing, that's when they give you folic acid,
Right.
is after you have a baby. Well, if you don't methylate it correctly, then you can definitely show signs of postpartum depression. So all I'm saying is, there's a gene test you can do. Go test your genes to see, and it's once in a lifetime because your genes are your genes. So it's not like something you have to watch constantly. So you go test and see if you have these variants or not. And again, it's MTHFR, MTR, COMT. And so you test those, and do you even have to test them? I don't think so. This is what you do. You get a methylated vitamin.
Mm-hmm.
You get a methylated vitamin that is completely processed through your body, and you don't have to worry about, all of those additives and the things that are in a lot of vitamins. I mean, some of the vitamins that are on the market, there's so many, additives in there.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk to my clients and we're doing our one-on-one interview, that's one of the first things I say. Just it's a simple change. It's maybe $20, $30 a month. You're taking a multivitamin anyways. Might as well just buy one that's already methylated.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then there's some people that don't need it. There's another, 60 something percent that are just fine. But 4% is a huge amount.
That's high. And here's the other thing, Diana, for the longest time, everything was, make sure you have this with folic acid. This is folic acid is, and this is what I mean by there's these trends that come out, and everyone flocks to these things on TikTok, and they automatically think it's okay for them, but it's not necessarily okay for them. And they're doing things that are creating problems for their health. I mean, I that is,
especially if you don't methylate correctly, because methylation is all about the conversion of your vitamins and nutrients into your body. That's all it is. And they just passed, I can't remember what it was called, but they are fortifying all breads and tortillas and all these foods that are that are being produced with folate and folic acid. The last thing we need. I mean, it's right up there with glyphosate.
Right.
I mean, the glyphosates too, listen, the bread is not bad. What is it? Oatmeal, all of these things, they're not bad, but when they're treated here in the US by glyphosate, they become terrible.
Correct.
So it's kind of the same thing. It's just the additives that we are putting into our foods, that we are coating our foods with, that are the biggest issue. Go to Italy. You can eat, Why
is that? I have to tell you,
they don't use glyphosate to treat their products.
Right. And, I've got a husband and a child that will have things with different issues with, acid reflux or heartburn.
Right.
We go and we travel, and absolutely eat whatever they want all day long. There's no heartburn. There's no anything. And, a few years back, I decided, you know what? I'm going to make my own bread. I'm making my own yogurt. I'm making, and it changes. It just changes how things are in their system. And it's just frustrating. It's frustrating that we put so much into our foods here, and so much into, my gosh, everything in our household that just leads to all these horrible things that happen. So now you were talking about hair. We've been talking about hair. We've been talking about things within our body. All of that leads to hair loss, can lead to hair loss. But what about also scalp care? There's a lot about scalp care. Let's talk about that right now.
Yes. So scalp care obviously is a big one. So scalp care, the reason why it's important is because if you don't have a clean canvas for your hair to grow out of, your hair is not going to grow out of it. Meaning, if we think of it like a plant coming through the soil, if the soil is not good soil, the plant is not going to grow correctly. Mm-hmm. And, when a plant dies, we don't look at the leaf, we don't look at the flower, we look at the soil. Mm-hmm. What is wrong with the soil? So, and that's kind of the approach that I take to it. I can give you all the topicals, I can give you the shampoos, the conditioners. Um, Topical peptides is a big thing too that I use. It could be the minoxidils, the finasteride, all those things that are topically. But if it's not penetrating and absorbing into the scalp, then big deal. So what does that mean? So free, easy things to do that you can do at home. Okay, use a good shampoo, get a good lather in. I say 2 shampoos every single time. If it doesn't have a good lather, then you do another one. Mm-hmm. That means your hair was just dirty enough. I think it's more important than worrying about how often do you shampoo your hair, or is your scalp just clean? Mm-hmm. So does that mean every day? Does that mean every other day? Does that mean once a week? If you are getting a good lather when you do your shampoo, that's the amount of days. So did you wait 3 days? You still got a lather? Your hair isn't absorbing so much of the oils. And the dirt that you see that is in your hair. So we produce sebum, we produce oil. Mm-hmm. All that does is it attracts the dust. It attracts our hairspray, the product that we put on our hair, those kind of things. So it's just the oils that are kind of like fly paper for everything in the environment. So then conditioner. The conditioner, it's a big one, especially for us ladies with longer hair. It doesn't need to go on the scalp. Mm-hmm. Conditioner does not need to go on the scalp. I don't know why my phone's ringing. Can you hear that? Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I told everyone.
Heard nothing.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So maybe it was just my computer. So yes. So conditioner, it doesn't need to go on the scalp. That is brand new hair. That is hair. I mean, our hair grows half an inch a month. Mm-hmm. Brand new hair doesn't need conditioner. This hair is 6 months old. This hair, a year old. So once it gets into the year to 2-year-old, you have to condition the hair. So you take the conditioner, from probably mid scalp out, or at least a couple inches off of the roots, and then you use the conditioner. I use a big
Diana,
brush.
Hold on. Say that again. This hair, because that's big. Say that again.
Okay, so this hair here, so about here to 6 inches. So our hair grows half an inch a month, which means that's 6 inches a year. Mm-hmm. Not that much if you think about it.
Right.
So if we have about 6 inches, this is a year of growth. This is 1 year of growth. This is 2 years of growth. So if you think about the hair growth cycle and how, and all along we are trimming it, hopefully you're trimming it off because, hair can seem like it's thinning when it's not falling out, meaning your hair is growing normally, but if it's dry and broken and brittle down here because it's not being taken care of, then it keeps splitting and breaking and splitting and breaking. So people always say to me, well, my hair isn't growing. I go, yes, it is, because you're in here every 6 weeks for your roots or every 4 weeks for your roots to touch up those roots. So your hair is growing, but it's breaking off somewhere along the line. Mm-hmm. So that's the issue too. So, is it breaking or is it just not growing? So back to your original question, the health of the scalp. So, we have to keep it clean. We can't clog it with the products that we're using, i.e. conditioners. Then we get into gels and mousse and the leave-in, the beautiful oils and those wonderful smelling, endocrine disrupting products, unless they're chosen wisely. And don't let those touch the scalp, because all you're doing is filling in those follicles with gook. And guess what? If you have gook in your follicles, your hair can't make its pathway, through the actual dermal layer. Mm. So, that's another thing. So we have those products. Now, what can you do to kind of keep it clean and the pathways open for growth? I say always the day of shampoo, not any other day, because what you're doing. So the day of shampoo, I say you take a scalp brush and or bristle brush is what I like, because that just kind of grabs on and kind of gives you a good clean circulation and gets the blood flowing. But you brush the scalp, not your hair. You brush your scalp. And so that is exfoliating the scalp. It is helping blood circulation, and it's just cleaning all of the debris out of those hair follicles. And so the reason I say to do that on the day of shampoo is because you're going to loosen up a lot of gook. Possibly
And
you could
then,
see flakes.
mm-hmm.
If you have wavy or curly hair, it gets really, big and fluffy and full. So I always say do it for 4 minutes because we all think we did it for 5 minutes. But if I say four, people tend to set a timer and they actually do it for 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you go and you wash your hair and you just, take care of your hair, and so you use the shampoo, no conditioner on your scalp. And then you come out and you do your topical, and what does that mean? There's topicals, whether it's, I like to use, there's a peptide serum that I love. There's actually a couple of them that I have tested and I've done a study on as well. So I like the peptides, the topical peptides, not the kind you inject yourself with. Although there's some really promising, I guess, scientific literature coming out about peptides that you actually inject with, and it just extends the growth cycle, which is really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And then there's people that use, there is the minoxidil people, which I did a study on that as well and went deep into that literature. There's rosemary oil that's been huge over TikTok and social media.
And castor oil.
Yes. And that study is what I have the most issue with, because this study was done in 2015. It was done in Iran and it was a study that had no placebo group. So we don't know what happens if you don't use this. And so what they use is they use 2.5% minoxidil, which is the woman's version of minoxidil.
Mm-hmm.
So you have 2.5% minoxidil and you have 5% minoxidil. And the thing is we don't have to use 2.5% minoxidil. What really works and works quicker is 5%.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you, though, there could be some irritation on anyone's scalp, man or woman. I think it's best to use the 5% foam, mm-hmm. only because there's less preservatives and less alcohol in the foam. So anyways, they do the study. And so what was interesting is you have the minoxidil, 2.5%, the lesser version, and then you have rosemary oil. Well, the rosemary oil, they called it a lotion, a rosemary lotion. So it didn't talk about what the lotion had in it as far as, were there any growth, factors that were helping the rosemary to work better, to penetrate better. What was the carrier oil? What did they use to get that rosemary oil into the scalp? None of that was mentioned. So they compared it to minoxidil. Mm-hmm. And so for it to be compared to minoxidil that is proven to work, they then extrapolated that the rosemary oil works just as well, which I don't know. I have an issue with that because, mm-hmm. First of all, again, what's the carrier oil? And I don't know about you, but I don't want to put any kind of oil
no,
on
definitely
my
not
scalp.
Seed oils. Yes. Yes.
Because your hair is going to be a mess.
Right.
So maybe this is something that could a man could try, but for us ladies, that's a lot. And the carrier oil could have been any oil, but still, it's just not great for your hair. So I had some real issue with that whole study, and it has just been wildfire all over the internet. So I thought that was interesting.
Something I remember when I was in college and my dad and I were having this really deep discussion about research and what comes mm-hmm. out there, because I was just now heading into my research with attention deficit disorder. And I was coming up with an entirely different hypothesis. And I was talking to my dad and he says, and I'll never forget this. He says, when you look at research or you're conducting research, look at all factors, because sometimes they come up with this and this is what we found, but you have to look at it. And this is the example he gave me. He says one university, 10% of students, female students, were having relationships with professors. This other university, 2/3 was having, wow. Right, okay, this is your reaction. This is most people's reaction. Well, when you dove into the research, you found out that the 2/3 university where you're like, oh my gosh, it was a a male only university that allowed 3 female students to attend, and 2 of them
Oh,
happened to be having relationships, compared to this
wow.
10% with a
Yes.
co-ed university, which was a massive amount. But
Yes.
we step back and look, oh my gosh, this university, bad. This one, not so bad. So I've always remembered that when you see research, Diana, I'm the same. I
Yes.
have to look at the components and what are all the different factors, because
Yes.
again, we see these things on TikTok, and I just here's my two-part concern, and why it was so important to have you on is because we've got our menopausal women who are, having hair loss. We have our men also having hair loss. And I think that most of the time in our society, it's like, oh, we expect men to have some hair loss, but not women,
Yes.
right? So,
Yeah, and men can just keep cutting it a little shorter and a little shorter
and they can
is the
go
idea, and
bald.
eventually shave bald. Yes,
Right, and
exactly.
shave bald, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, you're this sexy bald man. Where,
Yeah,
some women could pull that off, but let's face it, that's not what normally women want.
yeah,
So we have
no.
that, right? We have that area of the menopausal women. But here's my other concern, and it's because I have daughters, and that's because of all this stuff that they see. And I've had my girls walk out with their hair wrapped up with their oil. They had their, the little
Yep,
scrubbies. They've done all this stuff,
yep.
and it's just for hair health. And I said, we got to look at our products. We've got to make
Hmm.
sure, and that's where my Yucca app comes out. What is Yucca?
Yes,
What is not? But then,
yes,
we
yes.
research it. But do you think that there is this big risk with our young women with all these products they're putting on their hair, that it can actually lead to hair loss? And is it permanent? What are your thoughts with that whole thing?
Okay. So yes, do I think, because I too own a couple daughters that are a teenager and 21 and a teenager, and they want to be in Sephora. They want to be in, Ulta, and they want to buy all this nonsense that they see online. And the reality is there's so many old emulsifiers. There's all of these things that they put into these products, be it fragrances, are just terrible. And a lot of them are saying we're a clean
Mm-hmm.
product line, and they're actually not, because I go through and I look at the ingredients and I just compare it all. So, no, I don't think, I mean, yes, I do think it is an issue when it comes to hair loss, because here's the thing: when it comes to hair loss and these endocrine disruptors, and again, what did I say earlier? Our skin is our biggest organ. It absorbs, all of these toxins.
Mm-hmm.
So does it start with our purification of our shower water, and then it comes to our lotions, then it comes to the products we're putting on our hair. So slowly but surely, you are kind of killing your hair shaft. And
Mm-hmm.
if you think about it, it's like, hair is, it's a thick shaft, and to begin with, and then little by little, before you even know it, your hair is thinning. So maybe that shaft is getting smaller and smaller, because what's happening is it's starting to choke off and die. Or is it the scalp that it's becoming, clogged, and the actual hair follicles are choking off and dying? Which
Mm-hmm.
came first? I don't know. But by the time we start seeing thinning happening with the hair, or hair loss, it's almost too late. The good news is that the hair can be in a resting phase, which is what we said earlier, the telogen phase, where it's dormant, basically. So if the hair is still dormant, if it's in that telogen phase, then
Mm-hmm.
we have a chance of reviving it. But if it's not, and it's kind of like, we see somebody with that bald head that's happening. So it's either
Mm-hmm.
in the crown or it's on the sides here and that kind of thing. When that starts happening, it's almost too late. And what happens as well is, like for men, for instance, the gravitational pull of hair, and what causes that tight, thick, thin skin to just look, shiny
Mm-hmm.
and bald. A lot of times it's just fat deposition. It's kind of like, when we look in the mirror and things are starting to fall.
Yeah.
Well, it falls here too. Our
Uh-huh.
our scalp skin is also falling too. So,
Right.
there's lots of different things that you can do. There's all kinds of modalities that you can do, that you can inject, fat back into the scalp or the areas that are kind of showing some evidence of hair loss, of baldness and that kind of thing. Because if you think about it, the hair follicle sits just below the skin surface, which is the subcutaneous layer, which is, we need healthy fats in there in order to keep the hair healthy and growing. If we're losing that layer, then that's why you're losing hair too. So there's so many other things, but I kind of digress onto the sciencey, nerdy part of it.
No,
but,
I love this.
I mean, but as far as what the girls are using, I mean, I literally, you would think my daughters got caught smoking if I find them with a shampoo or a conditioner or a product that is, I think just not good for your hair, or that I know is not good for your hair. I mean, I've been at this for, like I said, 25 plus years. And what I've done as well, and kind of what took me down this rabbit hole years ago, I was with a dermatologist doctor, and, she just looked at me. She, why do you know so much about, all of these, issues when it comes to the chemicals and the products and that kind of thing? And I said, I'm a hairstylist, and I've dealt with some stuff with my kids with eczema and that kind of stuff. And it's just been, we were in Children's Hospital several times, UCLA Medical. I mean, we had lots of things going on. So I did go down the rabbit hole of medical stuff. And so she started working with me. She sent me clients, and she would send me clients, and we would kind of collaborate together, and we would look at what it was that they were, why were they allergic all of a sudden out of nowhere? Right. What were they eating? What were their blood serum levels? What was going on environmentally? And I didn't even know half of what I know 15 years ago when I started working with these doctors. And so it was really interesting, because back then you couldn't just copy and paste and go to ChatGPT or to Claude or any of those. So we would literally go line by line. And why did this person develop this, allergic reaction to hair color, to shampoo, to, and I mean, and, we have to also understand that 82% of autoimmune disorders are in women. And I mean, they're starting younger and younger and younger. I see it in my girls, and my girls have eaten so well. They have been athletic. They have, they do their grounding, they do their breath work, they do their morning sun most of the time. They eat remarkably well. And, I was always the mother that, every once in a while you could have a fun little snack or stop and get, a taco from somewhere. But, but now I'm like, no, there's no more of that, because I think that our environment has changed so much. The nutrients in our foods are just not there anymore. I mean, how could they be there? Unless you're doing regenerative farming, how do you know that the product that you're buying, be it produce, be it your meats, your fishes, your fish, all of that kind of stuff, how do we know that you're actually getting any kind of nutrients? Because everything is so nutrient devoid now because of the environment.
Well, the other day, my younger daughter, she loves salmon. And so I hadn't cooked it for a while because, I don't know, I wasn't really liking what I was seeing out there, because I only use wild, because the farm raised salmon, there's so many issues with it. Anyway, I wound up making it for her, and she said, it's delicious, but it's not like this one restaurant. And I said, well, that's because they use farm raised. And she's like, oh, yeah, I know, you sent me that article. I said,
or seed oils, or, God knows what they're putting in.
Right. It's just, it's a different color. It's a different texture. It's just different. And, and I'm buying fresh. It's not like I'm buying frozen, which is fine too. But she just had a different experience. And I said, let's go back and look at it. And we did. We took a few minutes and we looked at it, and she was like, oh, God. And I said, yeah. So you have to be so careful. Whereas, my other daughter, who is traveling all over the world, and it's interesting, literally all over the world right now. And she hasn't been really that sick going to all these different countries, right? Yet when she's back in the States, going out to a restaurant sometimes is like, oh my gosh, do I want to put up with the stomach ache? Because she seems to be really
Yes.
affected by the oils. Like we've been able to
Yes.
kind of dwindle it down to oils, and there's a few other things that really set her off. And we have to become more and more aware of these things and keep educating our young people, not just girls, but our young people on all of
Yes.
these different products and food and so on and so forth. So, you've brought so much a wealth of information here. So I want to ask you a couple other things because I also want everyone to know that with this episode, we're going to have links directly to you because I think it is so important. You and I, Diana, you and I have always been on this. I've known Diana for years, everyone. I've known her for
Yeah.
years. She's amazing. Used to do my hair, then went ahead and moved,
And then I left you.
and left me.
It was like breaking up with 150 boyfriends or fiancés, hundreds of people.
Right.
It was awful leaving all my friends
I mean,
and everything.
it was a loss, but look, so happy with your life and what you were doing, and just I don't know, you radiated happiness, so it made up for that. But what I will say is, you and I have always had these amazing conversations because you know because of what I do. I always, again, did this deep dive into foods and what was in preservatives and what was in, these artificial dyes and artificial flavors. And a lot of times I would get a little bit of slack or judgment from other parents when, right, when you were using it. And as a parent, you don't want to apologize for your parenting. And look, if you want to feed your kids well and be away from all of these things, continue to do it. I mean, you don't want deprivation. Deprivation is a host of other issues, as I always say. And you can look at moderation. But sometimes when your child or yourself, you have something that can be affected by even one time, is it worth it? Probably not.
Yeah.
So keep educating. And I think for women, especially if you're experiencing any type of hair loss or concern about it, clearly having a conversation with someone other than just your doctor or maybe a dermatologist, actually going to someone like Diana. And so we're going to have all those links there. But I did want to ask you a couple of questions. What are some of the noticeable hair losses for women? I know when you talked about men, you talked about the crown, you talked about, the widow's peak becoming, I don't even know. It's no longer.
Pimple.
Yeah. But what about for women? What are some signs where they have to say, oh my gosh, I need to book an appointment now?
Well, gosh, that's such a hard, thing to answer because it could be, any host of reasons. I mean, I've written a book. I've written about 20 digital, guides for people as well. And so, I go into supplements and hair loss, like we talked about, lab testing, like we talked about, hormones, like we talked about, PCOS, postpartum, thyroid support, perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. That's just a huge one as well. The gut health, the eating healthy for hair loss as well, because like we talked about the nutrients, just the daily grow lifestyle, detox and toxins, how to detox. That's a big one for me too, is I am big on learning how to detox. So, I coach people through what they need to do. And it's nothing, it's not, buying a tincture or a tea and detoxing. It is things like sweating. How do we get rid of toxins in our body? We pee, bowel movements, we sweat, we breathe. Breathing gets rid of toxins. And it affects the lymphatic system of our brain, which is basically like the adrenal system of our brain that is moving around spinal fluid, that type of thing. So what is going on inside of our body? Like I said, adrenal health, the non-toxic hair care, what are you buying? So I go over all these things with people. And then the hair tools, what are you using? Is it too hot? Because I'm not against curling irons and flat irons and blow dryers, but again, like we said before, is it not growing because it's breaking here, or is it not growing because it's not coming
I
out
see.
here at the scalp? So, I go into, the tools that you're using, the appliances, as far as that goes, extensions. I go deep into red light therapy. And also that's a big one for me also, because we talk about topically what can work. And, what's interesting about red light therapy in particular is, a lot of people think the more red light, the better, because it works with nanometers. So there's a proven study that talks about hair loss with red light. And iRestore is one of the ones that I use and I sell myself, because I just think it's such a great product for the red light. And the reason why that one works the best is, I talked about the nanometers. So it's anywhere from 600 to 650 nanometers of red light penetration. And why that matters is it only goes about 2 to 5 millimeters through your dermal layer. Now, what I said before earlier is we're talking about our hair follicle that is just under the subcutaneous level of the scalp. So if your red light is too strong, it goes too deep and it passes that area of your hair follicle completely. So it's really important to have the right device. And so, you have a device that, maybe you just have a problem in your crown area or your dome area and around your temples and that kind of thing. So it's like a helmet that works on the scalp. And I did a whole thing on that for my social media as well. It was me and the helmet is,
I saw
whatever.
it. I thought it was great.
Did you?
Yeah.
So there's, they have a lower level, a medium level, and then a higher level. And so the higher level, which is like the elite one, the reason why that one works a little bit better is because it has over 500 diodes. So it has a complete coverage of the scalp. So you're not just only hitting, maybe some of the problem areas here and at your temples. It hits your whole entire scalp. It works in half of the time of the other products that that a lot of products suggest, not just iRestore, but it's about 24 minutes for a dosage treatment. It can be anywhere from 3 to 5 to 7 days a week. I'm like, why not do it all the time? It's easy. And so the elite one with the 500 diodes, the good thing about that is you can do it in 12 minutes and you're done. The other thing I kind of like about using this, one of these kind of products is I can use it for my face.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I just kind of use the helmet, for my face, for my neck, décolleté, your chest. So I do have a red light that goes much higher into the 850 nanometers. And that's more for, where you have soreness or your joints are hurting and that kind of thing. So what I typically do is we do, like we were talking about, that scalp treatment, and I put on and I brush my scalp, shampoo my hair. I get some of the water out, and then I put on my peptides. And then I do the red light. So, and the important thing about the peptides is that, topically, and there's another study that I've done. I had about 80 people that I did a study with one specific peptide. So the popular one is GHKCU. And GHKCU is important because it has copper, which copper is what helps us to produce collagen and keep the fibrin. And the collagen and fibrin are probably most important, but I think it's more important to inject that and to keep our skin looking nice and keep our scalp blood flow going. That makes sense. But topically, I didn't see such a big difference. What I saw the big difference was another peptide, and that one is called OSO1. And so what that does is it keeps, I was talking about the environment of the scalp. It kills the dead skin cells. So they call those senescent cells. So by killing those senescent cells, all of the healthy cells have the freedom to just work correctly and help our hair growth. I have seen amazing. There wasn't one person that didn't enjoy some, and this is without red light. So we did this without red light. But red light is another modality that can elevate, that production of hair. So, is there one thing that does it all? No, but there are many things that can just take you incrementally higher and higher in hair production, and not even hair production, but just the health the health of your scalp. And so I am a big proponent of those topicals. And, and then there's, the people that do need minoxidil. I'm not against minoxidil. Like I said earlier, it is a vasal dilator. It keeps the blood flow going. And what we need, like I said earlier, is to keep that blood flow going on the scalp, because what feeds that bulb, the follicle, the blood circulation. That's the only thing that keeps it going. And it keeps that fat. We need that fat pad right underneath the layer of skin. So all of those things are, like I said, you can't have one without the other. You can't have just a topical that you put on if your water is not purified. You can't put on these products if your blood flow isn't, flowing correctly. You can't use the right shampoo and conditioner if you're not exfoliating correctly. So do you have to do it all at once? No. Do you have to throw away all of your shampoos and products that you use? No, but I suggest once you're done with it, just buy this one. Once you're done with this conditioner, buy this one, because or use it every few days, or give it to your husband. I just give my husband everything that I don't use. Or the dog. So it's such a loaded it's such a loaded question. I mean, every little thing helps, but I can tell you exactly all the things that will just be your optimal hair health. And, so we can avoid hair loss. A lot of people are using red light and they're not losing hair, but they just want to prevent. It's just a preventative measure. So that's kind of my thing on that.
Well, I got to say, all of this wealth of information you gave, this is a lot of information.
I know. I'm
but
sorry.
No, my gosh, no. What a gift. I mean, I'm
the worst person to be at a party or anywhere, because I'm just like, no, you have to do this. You have to do that.
Oh, yeah. But you and I would find ourselves in a corner talking about all these things. I mean, look, when the great line, when we know better, we do better. And I think that that's what's important. And if hair loss is a big concern, which I think it is to most women, and why TikTok and some of these things that are out there that create such a hype, it's because it's so important. It's a part of our identity, and it's a part of who we are. And I think as women, when you're going through that premenopause and menopause and postmenopause and all of that you're going through, whether it's hot flashes and, the stomach and all these different things, the itchy ears, there's so many
different. That's a new one. I just heard about the itchy ears. That's a new one. I had never heard about
I had the itchy ear. I had nothing else, just the itchy ear. And it was such
and frozen shoulder. Frozen shoulder, your Achilles, there's so many different things that come with wonderful.
Right. Yeah. And so for women, it's so important. And some of these videos that I see on TikTok where they go to a hair salon, and it's usually in a different country. And so they're not really talking, or sometimes they are, but I've stumbled onto these videos where it's with men too, but you see these women going in, okay? And they're just talking about their hair. They take it out of their bun they've wrapped up, and their hair is just like this. Yeah. And they're distraught, and they're crying, and they're, and the woman works with them, and then they put the, what do you call that thing that goes around? And
the cape.
The cape. They bring the cape up, and all of a sudden,
and it drops, and
they're just and the look on their faces is like, there you are. There you are.
I got to tell you, I think one of the most rewarding things, and I think I've said this before to you, is, how often are we with someone else one-on-one for 1, 2, 3, 4 hours? Sometimes it takes that long, depending on extensions and color and all that kind of stuff. But we're void of a restaurant. We're void of a husband. We're void of kids. We're void of anyone else except for just you and I. And that relationship that I have been so fortunate to have with so many people. I mean, it wasn't just the mom at school. It wasn't just, the friend of, my husband from work. It's this person that I got to sit on, and even their kids sit with,
Mm-hmm.
and even their children. They send their children in. I had such a special relationship with everybody's kids because I got to sit with them one on one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even your husband, like I know him so much better than so many other people because
Right.
I would, so I mean, it's such a valuable experience. But I mean, I've had women that they come in and they are balding.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is just a terrible situation. I had this one woman once that she would never even look in the mirror. So as we were doing the appointment,
Mm-hmm.
she would keep turning around and looking at me because she wouldn't even look peripherally in the mirror.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And I just was like, wow. And I say to everyone, it's not going to happen all in one day, but it's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen way quicker than it would have had you not met me. And that's not to pump myself up, but
No, but
it's
it's
not
true.
because of it's not because of everything I know. It's because I care and I
Yeah.
really want to get down to the nitty gritty. I mean, I'm that way with my father-in-law. I'm that way with my husband, with my kids. If you have a problem, I'm going to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be about hair. And, I'm the yellow pages
Mm-hmm.
I'm dating myself, but I am the yellow pages. If you want, a tile guy, if you want a plumber, but that goes the same with a doctor, with the
Mm-hmm.
test, the labs, those kind of things. So I take this, and what's really neat, so I was kind of pushed onto social media. I just got to a point where I couldn't keep interacting with so many people on the side and taking care of them. And that's kind of what catapulted me into
Mm-hmm.
writing all of these digital kits and the book and that kind of stuff, is because I kept saying the same thing and sending the same information.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even to a point where I've made up a whole hair prescription. And, I don't make money off of the things that I suggest as far as water filters and air filters
Sure.
and EWG and all the apps and the lab place that I go to get my labs done. But I just give out all this information because it's the only thing that's helped.
Mm-hmm.
I've done all the deep dive work. So you don't have to go and do this research. I just put it all into one little website that I built, which was so much work. But I mean, I can own businesses and buy homes and cars, but building a website and going on social media was
Right.
a whole nother level. And so yeah, I was kind of pushed into social media and I'm doing it. And I just I'm able to reach so many more people and I get to reconnect with so many more
That's
people
right.
that I adore and I miss so much. And I think about everyone, I mean, how often do I think about you or I think
Mm-hmm.
about, the other cat or all the
Mm-hmm.
cats that we know. And,
That's true.
and I'm like, oh, I should text her. Oh, I should
Mm-hmm.
call. But it's like, we get busy and
We
we move
get
on. And
busy.
so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so this is nice that I've gotten to reconnect with so many people and kind of just touch so many more people and people I'd never even met before who are
Mm-hmm.
just frantic and just so upset. Like you were saying, the cape, over the person and what hair can do for a person and how they feel. I mean, I
Oh,
hate that. It's just hair. And that's kind of my thing. It's just hair. I'm like, yeah, it's hair.
it's
And
hair.
it is the frame of our picture. It is
Mm-hmm.
everything, and listen, if I lost my hair tomorrow, it I would be obviously upset, but is it going to change anything else? No, it's not
Right.
going to change anything else, but I just kind of like it.
Well, but see,
So,
you're also speaking from a place of confidence, which is wonderful. And what that shows other people is that you have balance in your life. But a lot of times people don't have that balance. So to
right.
lose their hair could be so devastating and shoot them down a rabbit hole of depression.
Uh,
So that's why
yeah.
it's so important to take care of these things. And I think, again, as women, oftentimes, we're still taking care of so many other people that we forget about self until sometimes it's too late or till we're at this desperate, as you mentioned, frantic state. So, Dinah, tell me this. What is the name of your book and where can people find it?
Well, the book I haven't released just yet, but I have all
Ooh,
of the digital. I have all the digital kits that are basically chapters of the book. So it's kind of like the book within, the kits are within the website. I'm at hairloss2wellness.com.
Okay.
And on there, what I do is I offer a one-on-one consultation with somebody for an hour. And then if they do the one-on-one consultation, what I often do is I just give them all the kits for free. So that's just part of, becoming, a client, I guess.
Yeah.
And so that's
and where can they find you on Instagram?
So on Instagram, I'm at hair loss 2 wellness as well. So hair loss, the number 2 wellness on Facebook and Instagram. I am on both of those. And I'm on TikTok. My girls got me on TikTok, which is also hair loss 2 wellness. That's a whole other world, but it's so gratifying because people just really, they consume.
Yes, they do.
On TikTok.
The next one we got to get you on is YouTube. That's another one that you're.
Oh, that's it. Okay, so I've already done research
Wonderful.
on that. I'm trying to gather all my videos and all of my things that I'm doing so I can put it on YouTube and that kind of thing. So yeah,
that's great because yes, you're going to help a greater amount of people. And I got to tell you, the other day, maybe it was the last couple of days, you posted that one where you were walking on the beach and you're like, just get out and breathe, get out. Right. And you just tied that together with what
ground.
Yes. I love that. And it just reminded me, okay, I'm going to go back. I'm going to get my, my healthy bug spray because I got to tell you, I can walk outside and 1,000 will get me and sting me. And
I could show you a bug bite this big on my thigh right now, but
it's terrible. And it took me so long to find different products that I could use that are obviously not toxic, that actually work. I remember, our friend Mimi would laugh because I had found one that worked for a while and then stopped working. And it was literally vanilla extract in water. And she was like, but you're going to smell like a birthday cake and they're going to just come to you. I said, for some reason,
I have studied that would cause them to come to you.
It didn't. It actually got them to go away. But here's the thing. It didn't last. It wasn't a lasting thing. So I don't know, just my pH balance changed. Something happened. Next thing you know, it doesn't work.
You produce too much carbon dioxide. That's the problem. I've done a study on that one too.
See? So all of this is so good. So I want to thank you for coming today because you are just a wealth of information. And when you're ready to launch that book, let's have you come back on. Let's talk about it again because I just think it's so important. So thank you everyone for joining us today. This has been vital information. And like I said in the beginning, I hope you sat back and listened to everything that she was talking about. Go back, listen to it a second time, write some information down. Obviously, her contact information will be not only on our website, but she talked about it here. Write it down, reach out. Give yourself this gift. If you find yourself in a place where you're worrying, worry is not worth it, okay? If you are able to do this, do it. It's a wealth of information. Have someone work with you specifically because that's one of the things that she talked about that I thought was really, really important is that we're all different and maybe something that works for one person won't work for another person. So you want to find out what's going on. Internally, what are some tests that you can take? What are some things that you can do to put on your body that's going to help? Red light therapy, there's, again, a wealth of information. Give yourself that gift. If you're worried, do it. If you're not worried, but you want to just use the right products, do it. Our hair is a big deal. It really, really is. So take the time, give yourself that gift. Again, Diana, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
You're amazing. All right, everybody, have a great rest of the day. Bye.